in Israel, relatively to other countries, there was around 40,000 of refugees from Ukraine that came. Again, both refugees and immigrants were not discriminating on that part. The Israeli education system receives them, like the law of compulsory education makes everyone, also the Ukrainian kids, alleged to come to kindergartens and schools. Yet again, not all the schools, not all the kindergartens know how to receive kids that are in some kind of traumatic or post-traumatic experience, that speak another language. And so what we try to do in Israel is provide them with an after-school program in 7 cities, in Haifa, in Netanya, in Bat Yam and Rishon, in Ashdod, and Beersheba, where they again can enjoy speaking with with a person, with a caregiver that knows their language, speak with and relate to other kids that speak their language, play, have fun, have some kind of creative workshops with clay, with drawing, and something that I would also like to mention here, where people that really like to cooperate and collaborate with different organizations. Our last cooperation is with an organization called Dream Doctors, which an organization of medicinal plants that did amazing work in our spaces in Moldova, and now they will send a new delegation next week. And we're also planning to work with them in the Israeli centers, because we saw how much humor and playfulness that the clowns can bring affects these kids and also their parents. Again, when we're talking about joint activities that we can do both with kids and their moms, that's a very powerful thing. Not all the moms will come and see a psychologist. There is a whole mentality issue here, but a cultural issue. But they will immensely enjoy the work of a clown and the show and the playfulness that the clown can bring. Some more pictures. That's pictures of our spaces in Moldova. Our recent space in Moldova is in the south of Moldova, in an autonomous region of Moldova called Gagauzia. And that's totally different. Again, what happens, and that maybe has some optimistic side of it also, is that the kids that many times haven't experienced any other country or reality are suddenly thrown into a different reality, different culture, and they learn a huge load of things, of new things, new culture. So in Gagauzia, for example, it's a culture, ethnic Turk culture with its own language, but also Russian. And our kids there, for example, had a holiday called Kasum, which is a holiday of transition between autumn and winter. So that's also some kind of things that our kids experience. That's some pictures from Israel, and that's Prague. That's Ron building a chair. That's many times the things that we're engaged in. Yeah, maybe I will say something about our organization. We're a very lean organization. We have a very small team, group of people on a permanent, like working permanently, and big circles of volunteers and of people that are engaged in some way. We have around 30, at the moment we have around 30 educators in all of our spaces. And again, we have all kinds of plan for the future because we feel that they're needed. We're trying to think of ways to help Ukrainians in Ukraine. We're connecting to Ukrainian educators there to try to help them establish safe spaces inside Ukraine. There is a whole phenomenon of internal refugees in Ukraine, of people coming from East Ukraine to West Ukraine looking for shelter and refuge. And all kinds of programs of resilience building and so on, in order to help people survive this time and this war that at the moment we don't know when it will end. I'll stop here. I'll give you some time for questions. Do we have some time for questions?
Any comments, any questions?
Are there a lot of nightmares?
The kids? I don't remember actually nightmares as things that the kids complain about. They do complain about fear, and again they play through their fear. For example, I mentioned this plastic house. Yeah. So I remember when we established one of our centers in Moldova, in Cheresko, we brought all the kids, we brought some refreshments, we brought the families. And the first thing that happened is that the kids rushed to the house, and then they started playing a game where somebody will yell, "Siren, siren!" All the kids went out into the house, and the siren person were going around the house saying, "Siren, siren, hide!" And the kids closed the shutters of the house, stayed in the house, and then they switched roles. So that's one way to play with fear. Yeah, we had Halloween going on not long ago. Yeah, it's also a holiday that deals with fear, but that's a safe way to deal with fear. Yeah, you can be frightened of zombies or of ghosts. You're not talking about the real things that frighten you, like the big unknown of the future.
Can I ask?
Judy and then Arlene.
You mentioned burnout. Are you doing something to help the staff with their reactions?
Yeah. First, that's something that we really focus on. And first, we have a weekly training session. Every week, same time, on Thursday. Actually, today we are having another one. Lectures, but they're not really lectures. They are meetings with Russian-speaking experts about trauma, about burnout. We had a very successful meeting about burnout where people shared their experiences and feelings. And we try to bring them also knowledge about their situation, about the situation of the kids, tools that they can work with, but also some kind of moments of sharing fun and relaxation. Like we had an amazing meeting with dream doctors, with clowns for the staff. We laughed a lot. So that's important.
In the early part of your presentation, you showed the numbers in different countries. In the Czech Republic, seemed to have almost as many people as the citizens. Poland was, I think, was it over 1 million? It was.
Europe is flooded with refugees. Now. Yes, and European.
How are the people, the local people, accepting them, working with them?
It's a very good question, and a complex one. It can be answered shortly, but I say that there is, from one hand, an immense willingness of both countries and organizations to help, because everybody feels that it concerns them also. Like Russia is received as a real threat, and many people are received. Well, again, the ability to receive the refugees is depending on the resources of the country, and on the resources the country can find from local or international organizations. The people in the streets, it depends, like any people anywhere. There are people who are very accepting, people that house refugees for free, people that don't have anything to eat and still house refugees. Amazing shows of willingness and good heart. And there are people who are xenophobic, who are worried that the Ukrainians will take their jobs or will make the living expenses much higher, which happens again in all Europe. It drives the costs of living very high, and local people suffer from that. So yeah.
Howard?
Really, your presentation is informative and excellent and captivating. I'm wondering about the future, a question about the future. What's the hope of these people? Do they hope to go back to their home, the families to be reunited 100%? But to have that reunification in the Ukraine, somewhere in Europe, what about those in Israel? Do they want to stay here? What's the hope?
It's $1 million or maybe several $1 million question, and sorry that I can't answer it shortly again.
It's not a general answer either.
Yeah. As far as I hear from most of the women I talk with, they want home. They want to return home, even when they know that home is in shatters. Objectively in shatters. Yeah. There are people who don't have a home to go back to. And still, they want to go back to Ukraine, they want to be united with their families. Most of them, I believe, in the moment that it will be possible, will go back. There are some people who are, for different reasons, maybe because they're only mothers, again, it's very related to their family status, are starting new lives in new spaces, including Israel. But I think the major sentiment is going back.
Shoshana Gabay is asking, what happened to the children who will eventually go home after the war? Do they carry over the trauma?
You're asking excellent question, all very relevant, all questions that are working questions for us. What we try to do is reduce the trauma however we can. Which is, it really depends on how long it will last, how much normalcy we can bring to their lives at this point, how much tools and instruments to deal with the different feeling they feel now and contain them, we can give them. And some of it depends on what we can do, and some of it don't.
First of all, I want to thank you for coming here and giving an excellent presentation. And I want to thank you for your amazing work you're doing there. I'm sitting here and I'm trying not to cry from one sentence to another.
It's okay.
And you do.
We cry all the time. Honestly.
You do amazing work there, and thank you for that. And I wanted to ask you if you would have in your fantasy all the means in the world, what would be, in other words, what are you lacking a means to develop there?
Okay. First,
I assume your budget is limited, and you're trying to pull the blanket from all sides. And if you would have the money to doing all what you want to do, what would you do?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'll be very sincere. We lack budget. Yeah. At the moment, we stretched our budget so that we can assure. Again, education is about stability. Yeah. If we want to establish safe spaces, we need to offer stability for the staff members and for the kids or for the parents, no matter what happens. Yeah. If tomorrow Putin will end the war, it will be great and we will be happy and we will use this budget for something else, but we need to ensure that we have the budget for the safe spaces to continue working as long as they're needed, and they will be needed even after Putin will finish the war, because not everybody will come home immediately after that. Houses will have to be rebuilt. Cities will have to be able to be ready for the refugees to come back. So that's one thing. We need budget to be able to continue with the safe spaces as long as they're needed, and that means paying the staff. That means containing the spaces. It's not big amounts of money, but they are amounts of money that we at the moment can have insured after March. Yeah, we're looking till March. After March, we don't know. Another thing, which is a major thing, is Ukraine itself. Ukraine needs and will need rebuilding in all the ways of social health, education, resilience building, trauma coping. All that field is major and vast. I wish we had the means to work with that, to work with the kids, to work with educational staff, to work with therapeutic members, to bring them the knowledge we have from our experience, from the Israeli trauma expertise, and that also requires money. Again, not big sums of money, but some money. And again, everything that we can bring in terms of expertise, of psychological help, of or therapeutic help, of all the kinds of creative ways for people to be able to bring their human dignity back, is something that I would really like to have the means to invest in. So that's in short. And I say that we raise money. We fundraise. We fundraised in Israel some, and people were giving, again, not big sums, but some sums that helped us to continue working through these years. We try to apply to grants. Many grants and organizations are not dealing with the Ukraine crisis anymore. The media switched its focus. The organization switched its focus. So yeah, if you or you know people that can help with that, I'm really asking for your help and here.
Any other questions, comments? I'm going to take the opportunity to put on my other hat. Many of you know that I'm a physician. Many of you know that I'm a pediatrician. What you learn in your pediatric training is to contrast to training to be a physician for adults, internal medicine, is that when you talk about, for example, a disease process or a bacterial infection, you talk about the bacteria, what its potential to do its damage. But in pediatrics, you have two other factors. You have to know that what is the age of the development of the child, because the response to that bacteria will be different if it's an infant or a child as opposed to an adult. So the issue of what stage of development is the underlying thing, is the interface between whatever that trauma, whatever that infection is, and the child. The other basic principle you learn in pediatrics is the difference between acute trauma or acute disease and chronic disease. Those are usually things that have much greater implications for the child as you get to the adult. We're talking about trauma here. If it's a short-term trauma, then you have to take care of it. If somebody's in a, God forbid, a serious automobile accident, it's clearly what you have to do. It's surgical things, they're technical things. But if a child is able to get through that acute trauma, by and large, there is no long-term implications if they were relatively healthy and stable beforehand. But unless of a trauma for an earlier age that lasts for a longer period of time is much more traumatic, much more potentially long-term consequences. And consequences may be irreversible. Many of you know that I'm very much involved in a program in Ethiopia. And the major issue there is nutrition there. We're not talking about severe malnutrition that's going to threaten the life of the child. We're talking about a degree of undernutrition that goes on for a longer period of time. A chronic undernutrition thing. And if it's at a critical period of time, like the preschool child, under age of 3, it causes some degree of what we call growth stunting. Because that's the critical period that adequate and complete nutrition makes a difference for the development of the brain for the long term. We can then feed these children, but it's irreversible if you miss that boat at that critical period. The chronic undernutrition causes stunting of growth. And here what I'm concerned about, I think you were saying, is for that critical period of surely of the preschool child, which is a very unique situation. It's not the trauma of leaving the family, the home, etc., etc. But it's a chronic situation. Are we going to have a degree of emotional stunting here that's going to cause some type of long-term consequences? So the preschool child is the one that obviously I would be concerned of as a pediatrician. A 10-year-old, 12-year-old can handle this and can work through this. And if otherwise did not have problems before, likely they're not going to be serious long-term problems. If there are, it's probably related as much to the internal dynamics of that particular family. But the perfectly healthy child, with a, quote, no problem before with a family, but put into this situation at that critical period of emotional development, then there could be irreversible damage, and that will have the equivalent of growth stunting. We will have emotional stunting with all its long-term implications. So there are priorities, and I assume that's how you structured the program here. If there are no other comments, I apologize for taking some of your time.
Just
No,
point
that,
out
that,
that-
that's very, very important.
You
I
point
think
out
we
the
will
dream
use that
doctors.
emotional stunting.
Okay. Okay. That's my third hat. Okay.
Is there any other questions
No.
or comments?
I can tell you that not only another group will be coming, but we have enough funding for at least 2 more groups after that. I don't know if I'm supposed to officially announce that, but that's off the record.